Hello and welcome to the reading from Agastya, the Siddha Principles, based on the sacred discourses of Agastya Valipadu. Last few weeks, we've been talking about the energy centers, the chakras, and the Kundalini ascension. And today's we are going to continue to talk about the three centers of knowledge that Sage Agastya talks about. We talked about Anahata Chakra, the Ajna Chakra, and the Sahasrara Chakra. And Appa Agastya said that these are the three centers where you can assimilate knowledge. The soul can assimilate knowledge in the created world. So we talked about how the Anahata Chakra is the area where we can assimilate the intuitive knowledge. And then we are coming to the Ajna Chakra. We were talking about the Ajna Chakra, the location of the Ajna Chakra as being in the anterior portion of the brain, not the posterior, anterior portion of the brain, and between the two eyebrows, and not here, which is the eye of the Shiva that we all know as, but between the eyebrows. Now, Appa is continues to talk about Ajna Chakra, and this is what he says. Now, let us see why the Ajna Chakra is present. In order to have a guru reside in our hearts, we must cleanse our heart, purify it, open the door, and invite a guru. So this is what we discussed last week. So in the Anahata Chakra, we want to open the doors and invite our guru. And there is a very good reason why Appa is talking about inviting the guru at the Anahata Chakra level, and we will go into that a little more in detail in a few minutes. So this is one of the higher chakras. From here begins the higher chakras, the more elevated chakras, which connect to higher consciousness. So we first begin the journey inviting the guru into our heart. This is also the area of our consciousness, which we already discussed about, which is the area of the air element. And this is where we become understand and become aware of the created world. Now, Appa goes on. In the same way, we must cleanse the area of the third eye, and without having any other thoughts, discarding all other thoughts, open both the doors and invite wisdom. So what is he saying? When we come to, after we get, invite the guru through devotion, through surrender in our Anahata Chakra, we move on to the Ajna Chakra. Here, in order to gain wisdom of a higher level, he said, discard all other thoughts. Now, what do we understand by that? In our waking consciousness, we are constantly bombarded with thoughts. So if you follow the thought process, if you look at something, if you smell something, if you hear something, or you touch something, immediately it triggers some kind of thought. And if you follow the thought, within a few seconds, you'll realize that you've gone a long distance from the actual thing that touched your senses to where your thought has led you. So one of the most difficult things that a person can do in the spiritual process or sadhana is to start letting go of thoughts. So to come to that level, we have to be very, very, very careful in terms of what we allow our sense telephones in our waking consciousness to see, to hear, or accept, or eat. Everything we see and do is going to affect us, affect the thought process. So we must begin to purify ourselves. And how can we do that? Very simple. Being good. That is the basic, ultimate basic foundation of spiritual life. When we think good thoughts, when we allow only good things to come into our senses, that is when we are ready to receive higher knowledge. Now, he's also talking about discarding all other thoughts, open both doors and invite wisdom. What are these doors? Some of the people who read Agastya Vadipadu said, oh, this is the Ida and Pingala. That's what he's talking about. No. He's talking about the higher and lower chakras, the chakras that are minor chakras and that are above and below the Ajna Chakra, the Soma and the Swaha. And this is a very important area because when we go into higher practices of spiritual sadhana, this is the area using these three chakras, understanding the significance of these three chakras, we can perform the Agnihotra ritual internally. And we'll come to that one of these sessions. Then Appa continues to say, so invite wisdom, opening up that. So when you perform that final Agnihotra ritual within yourself, then you will invite the higher knowledge. It's not the supreme knowledge, because supreme consciousness and supreme knowledge is only available at the Sahasrara level, but higher knowledge, more of knowing the whys and wherefores of everything that is around you, why creation and why karma, all those things become very clear to you. And we already talked about how the present day gurus who are talking about all this have already ascended that level. Now Appa says, how and who can do this? There are two qualifications that are required. One is the method of meditation, wisdom, or knowledge. So what do you mean by that? So first of all, one has to be able to actually have the opportunity to sit down and meditate. Not everybody can do that, because unfortunately, most of the population in the world are so caught up in the struggles of daily life. They never have the opportunity to even think of anything beyond survival. Think about all the people who are suffering war right now. They cannot think of anything. They cannot think of higher principles, because based on the karmic, area of that karmic effects, they are only able to just focus on survival. So only and then you think about yourselves, all of you who are able to actually seek and assimilate higher knowledge, how fortunate you are that you have the opportunity to sit and meditate, not having to worry about where you're going to get your next food and shelter. So you've already ascended a higher level in your evolution in the sadhana. So once you know that you want to acquire wisdom, then you follow a certain type of meditation that is more suited to you. So there is nothing wrong in the different types of meditation that people teach. Even the most basic levels of meditation also have a purpose, because everything is needed for people at that particular level. So whether you're doing Kriya Kundalini or Kriya Yoga or Laya Yoga, it doesn't matter. Everything is based on the level you need, your soul requires for your personal growth. And so the method of meditation is important. Then the next and most important thing is wisdom or knowledge. So, and we have already talked about the Paragnana and Aparagnana. Aparagnana is the knowledge that we acquire, like science and geography and history, by reading books, which is taught in schools. But Paragnana is higher knowledge, which comes directly from the consciousness. It's absorbed. It cannot be taught. That is how the Vedas were given. That is how Agastya Vadipadu was given. And that is the knowledge also that you begin to understand when you are reading this kind of sacred discourses or hearing about them, and layers and layers of inner meaning start opening up. So that is wisdom or knowledge. Once you have these two, he says, to gain the first qualification, one can follow the methods of meditation as practiced in Raja Yoga, Kriya Yoga, or Laya Yoga. I don't know for what particular reason, but Appa Agastya always has a very clear reason of why he specifies certain things. So he is actually talking about only three types of yoga here. One is Raja Yoga. And these are very original types of yoga. I mean, today in the world, there are lots and lots of new methods of yoga that have been created, developed, and they're being taught. But Appa is going back to the very basics: Raja Yoga, Kriya Yoga, and Laya Yoga. Raja Yoga, they say, is the highest form of meditation. Then comes Kriya Yoga, which is involves a certain kind of pranayama, and usually taught by followers of Babaji. And then there is Laya Yoga, which is more, it's more tantric in a meditation type. And it seeks to dissolve the conditional mind through such means as breath control and seals and mudras, where they are focused more on how to hold your hand, what happens. Like, for example, why do we hold your hand like this? Your fingers. It's because of circulation of energy. We must understand that the palms of both we are always emitting energy. And that is why the palms are always shown as like this in gods and gurus, and even in other religions, because from that is where energy flows through another person. But when you do this in meditation, then the energy circulation is within the circle around you. That is why one of the things that we learn in Laya Yoga is that, but I don't do that. But those are the things that people who practice Laya Yoga focus on. Then he says, some practice self-control and subject their body and mind to severe punishment, which is a method known as Hatha Yoga, and are able to attain higher wisdom. So that is also possible. There are people who do Hatha Yoga where they lay down on a bed of nails, and all that is fine. But Appa says that is more, you can still gain higher wisdom, but it is more hard for a lot of people to do. Then he continues to say, lower level of people pursue the use of yantras, tantras, and mantras to gain wisdom. So wisdom can be gained through a lot of ways. Another way is to use tantras and yantras, because yantras, diagrams especially, have a lot of power. That is why the swastika was very powerful for the Nazis. So is the Sri Chakra and all those chakras that we know in Hindu religion. But these have power because everything of the created world can also be used to connect to higher wisdom. But such knowledge, Appa says, when gained, causes harm and not good to others. See, there are practices of Sri Chakra Yantra, and that is beautiful because they're focusing on the higher levels of Shakti worship. And that is good. But there are also people who use similar yantras and tantras to bring in power, which can be used for negative things. And Appa says that is not good. The result is that such a man who commits wrong, who uses this kind of yantras to get the power to do wrong, will fail, reach the bottom, become a worm, squirming and being squashed, take several small births. In Tamil, this is given very beautifully, but I've tried my best to explain this in English. So there are two things we can understand. That even if a person uses all these different yantras, mantras, and tantras to gain a lot of power, they can also use it for bad things. And when they use it for bad things, the karma is extremely harsh. This is where black magicians, people use these good things for bad reasons, come into play. So at this level, we must understand what does Appa say about take several small births. If you look at Valipadu, as you read it, you understand that it is not necessary that a human being comes back and takes rebirth as a human being. It is possible through certain karma, like this one, to come back in a lower form. Like the pigs that Christ said, got the demons out of the pigs when they were harassing people. So what were these demons? These were all these fallen brothers and sisters who had gone to a higher level, but used that power for negative reasons. So what do we understand by this? We understand that these are all, again, levels of consciousness. So in a Hindu tradition, we have what is called Patala, Loka, Bhuvar Loka, Bhuloka. So what does all this mean? Are these actually existing planes, like, like the earth plane? No, these are all levels of consciousness. So let us examine those before we go forward. We have the Burloka, which is the earth, which is the existence or level of consciousness that we all are at, and that is at the Anahata level. Above these are other lokas, and below the Anahata is the lower lokas. So always remember, Anahata Chakra is the level of the creation or earth at this point. Then comes the Bhuvarloka, which is inhabited by semi-divine beings. Svaraloka or Svargaloka, as we call, that is inhabited by gods. And what we all think, gods are in the highest plane of existence. No, gods are energies who have a specific reason for being in this created world to help us, and they occupy the Svarloka or Svargaloka. Then comes the Maharloka, where we have the Bodhisattvas and Arhats, and that is a higher level. And then comes the Janaloka, which is the plane of God consciousness, where we have the mystics and the spiritual leaders who are already connected to a higher plane. The Tapaloka, which is perhaps the highest in the created world, which is the place of the rishis. And then comes Satyaloka, which is at the Sahasrara level, which is where all duality ceases to exist, and that is the supreme consciousness level. So these lokas are here, but what does that mean also? That in our waking consciousness, we are constantly connecting to any one of these frequencies. So let us go back and look at what Appa is talking about in terms of the lower levels or the lower lokas. We have the Atala Loka, which is occupied by more lustful thoughts. So those who are having a lot of lustful thoughts, always connecting to this level of consciousness. Vitala Loka is where they're oblivious to the higher states of life, existence. So they are only concerned about materialistic world. They know that they're here in this earth. They know that they have been born. They have got a family. They want to do their, buy their homes and cars and then finish and they die. And they are at that level. They even discard the idea of anything higher than themselves or the created world. Then comes the Sutala Loka, where we have the fallen brothers and sisters, which are those who have practiced, gone higher in the sadhana, but have failed in terms of being tempted by lust and other things. They come there. Then we have the Tatala Loka, where we have people who are darkly veiled by ignorance. So these are people who are so tamasic in nature. They're absolutely, totally don't know anything about life. They don't know much about living in the present life. They live a life where they just eat, sleep, and they many times don't even want to work because they are at that level. They're kind of very tamasic in nature. Then we come to Mahatala Loka, where we have the temptations and addictions. So all of those people who are addicted are consciously connecting to that particular level of consciousness. Then we come to Rasatala, which is even worse than that, which is where people of violent nature connect. And finally, we come to the Patala Loka, which is what Appa is talking right now. And that is where people like black magicians fall. That is the worst plane of consciousness one can have. So in our waking consciousness, in our lives, we are constantly connecting to different levels of consciousness based on how we think, based on what we allow to come within our minds. Why is all this important? Because Appa says, hence, one must only search for the good and allow only pure and good knowledge to enter our forehead. This kind of locked up knowledge is given to a man based on his capacity at the right times. So the knowledge that comes from at the Ajna Chakra level is of a higher nature, which requires you to be of a purer level, which brings you to a higher frequency. And that is why it's so important to keep only good thoughts. Even when you have thoughts about anger or greed or frustration, all those still all need to be let go of. And that is where most of us are at. struggling to achieve that level. When that happens, the knowledge is given to a man based on his capacity at the right times. And that is where most of us are now. We are not constantly at a level where we can constantly receive higher knowledge, but at times, because our thoughts are purified and our actions, everything is in a very good frequency, that is, and it is right, then this kind of higher knowledge is given to us. So at that times, we understand what we are reading, understand the layers of meaning in what Agastya has said. But other times, we are in normal waking consciousness, still being, bombarded by bad thoughts or negative thoughts. And so the importance again comes back to dharma, to being righteous in how you live, how you act, how you behave, how you react. That is why Vadupadu is the basis of the foundation of Jnana Yoga. With that, you can go higher. Without that basic foundation of righteousness, you cannot build Jnana, you cannot build Bhakti, you cannot go higher. You have to have that. Otherwise, what will happen? Like our fallen brothers and sisters, we can go all the way up and then fall back to Sutala or level of consciousness. So understand these lokas as levels of consciousness and decide whether you want to connect to that kind of consciousness. Now we come to a very difficult but esoteric portion called Brahma Danda, which I am not qualified to talk about, but I'll try my best to explain. And if there's anybody out there, any spiritual master who can understand this and explain, they're most welcome to do so. So while explaining the esoteric topics of energy centers and ascension of Kundalini, Sage Agastya himself mentioned what he termed Brahma Danda. It is a completely new concept or term that hitherto has not been given to the world, according to the great sage himself. This is the aforementioned knowledge about reaching God realization through the Sahasrara Chakra. So at this level, Appa has gone beyond the Ajna Chakra, and he is talking about what happens between the Ajna Chakra and the Sahasrara Chakra. So it is here that he says there is a particular thing that helps in gaining that final knowledge. So addressing Gajaraj Swamigal and Arultai Vijayalakshmi, Sage Agastya said, the six-faced one, Arumugan, father, epitome of knowledge, Jnaneshwara, because Muruga is the god of knowledge. Bowing to you, I bow to the father, Ishvara also. Today, I'll explain three topics. I have already told you about whom we may allow to be seated in our hearts. Cleansing your heart, lighting a lamp, amplifying the white light, in that sacred place, only three may be allowed to occupy. And he says it's gods, gurus, parents, and those who are with whom we have that pure unconditional love only. Then he continues, my response to your question on who these three are is God, Guru, the parents that you love are only those that are worthy of this place. Because the heart is a very, very important area where the Guru, once he occupies, you do not want to give room to any lower levels of energy to be there. Secondly, I have explained about the place between the eyebrows where the Ajna Chakra is present. This is the place that is worthy of acquiring wisdom. We've already talked about it. You ask why? It is here that the tool takes shape or forms at a peak at the upper head. It is that which I have named Brahma Dandam. So once you begin to open up your Ajna Chakra and allow higher knowledge, that is when Appa says a tool takes place. And what is this? Let us learn more about it. I am referring to the area of the top of the head, which is present in the middle of the Sahasrara Chakra. Now, many of us think that Sahasrara Chakra is right at the top of the head, but the top of the head is in the middle of the Sahasrara Chakra, which means the Sahasrara Chakra is around it. It's higher, and it is a higher, a field of energy that exists beyond our physical head. This chakra does not normally flower for everyone. And we have talked about it. It doesn't normally flower for everyone because once it flowers, it becomes very hard to remain in the field of duality, which is the created world. because then that person has to maintain at least one link to get back here, remain and exist here, and be able to help others. And that is where Ramana Maharshi and other great souls lived. They attained the final release, but they did not cut off that one final link to the created world, because once they did that, then they couldn't exist anymore. When one comprehending wisdom sits with discipline and regulates the breath and focuses within in complete one-pointedness, it is that naga that triggers the awakening of the powerful slumbering serpent known as Kundalini. So what Appa is saying is, it is that tool that awakens here after the Ajna Chakra that triggers the power of the Kundalini, which is at the base of the spine. Holding that subtle knowledge that exists in the middle of the spine and climbing up, it is that which has the power to attain Shiva, that which enables the 1,000-petaled Sahasrara Chakra to gently open after seeing the forms of Shiva and Shakti. Now, this whole paragraph is highly, highly esoteric. So I'll just try to explain as much as I can. So what Appa is saying is, after the level of Ajna Chakra, then comes the tool that actually awakens Kundalini. And it is that exists in the middle of and holding that spinal cord or the Sushumna Nadi. It goes up, sees Shiva and Shakti, which is, again, when we are talking about the esoteric level, we must understand that we came into creation because of the power of the Shiva and the Shakti, the absolute and the creative existence. In order to go back to the level of beyond duality, we still need to get to the level where we can understand and see in the sense, understand the power of Shiva and the power of Shakti as the creative and the absolute, and then go to the highest level. And it is that which bestows the rare power that is called Kundali. He calls it as Kundalini, as Kundali instead of Kundalini. And so I checked up, in other resources, and I found out in the olden days, the original meaning of Kundali in Sanskrit means coiled power, but it is now more commonly known as Kundalini. So it is the same. But in the olden ages, in Sanskrit, it was always called as Kundali. But for whatever reason, we have now begun to start using the common term Kundalini to refer to this Shakti. It is only then that one who meditates and attains siddhis becomes a siddha. So this is again another interesting layer that Appa is talking about. So it's only when one is able to meditate, reach that level where the Brahma Danda awakens the Kundalini power, and it rises up and reaches the area where it witnesses Shiva and Shakti, the creative and the absolute power. It can open up a higher level of knowledge where that person becomes a siddha, a perfected being. Because when a person becomes a siddha, that person has the capacity to do everything that any the creative power can do, that Ma Shakti can do. They can do, they have control over everything that is created. That is a siddha. A lot of people who call themselves siddha or known as siddhas may not be really siddhas unless they're able to bring somebody back to life. Change the energy of a person to give them light or eyesight, or speak if they are dumb. Change the energy in the diseased body to cure them, or be able to appear in different places to different people. They are siddhas because they've already perfected the idea of what being a creative energy is. So then he continues to say, now we'll tell you about the power that arises from the area at the center of the Sahasrara, which is the top of the head, is the center of the Sahasrara Chakra. The skull does not cover the head of infants. Only a couple of places there remain hidden without reaching completion. As man grows, the skull grows and covers this empty space. So Appa is saying there is an empty space in the skull that is there, and usually the skull doesn't cover the head of the infants, but as we grow, it covers the head, but inside the head of man, there is an area where there is an empty space. It is in this place that a tool arises. So that empty space that Appa is talking about, he says, is where the tool called the Brahma Danda arises. And as everyone thinks, there is no mantra there. So there are a lot of drawings where you will see a mantra written in the middle of the head. And Appa says, no, there is no mantra there. There is nothing there that can limit the love and desire that arises in the mind. So it is that final level where the unconditional love, the bliss, that is where it comes from. It is that determination of the mind that, giving no importance to the material that is on its way, enters inside and then emerges. So there is a whole process Appa is talking about, which I don't understand at this point. But this is what happens as we grow further in this field of spirituality, the final stage between the Ajna Chakra and the Sahasrara. This enters and creates a beautiful relationship between the body, mind, and from there, the very absolute, he declares. So at that time, the entire purpose of creation is known without any doubt. When the creator and the creation becomes one, and that is when the one becomes almost as the absolute, almost. It is that which I have newly named and called as Brahma Danda today. It is this that helps those that are wise, those that follow the norms, those that are advanced in knowledge, those that do good, those that have a good character, those that safeguard righteousness to attain supreme knowledge. So again, this is a very important paragraph in this whole chapter. He says this tool can be used or arises only in certain people who have certain qualifications. What are those? Those that are wise. What does a wise man do? The wise man, the way he talks, the he reacts, everything is measured, very calm, because he knows the truth about things. Those that follow the norms, very important. So that is why when the Christians talk about the 10 commandments, it's so important, because that is the basic foundation of spirituality, as we have already talked about. Yama, niyama, that's what Patanjali talks about. We must follow the norms of the created world, live righteously. Those that are advanced in knowledge, like the gurus of today, those that do good. See, again, good karma is always important. Do good to others, always, never anything bad. Because if you remember when we talked about karma, karma is always in relationship with another being. So whatever you do in terms of another person or other being, that is what causes karma. And those that have got good character. So again, a person of good character is more important, more highly advanced in the spiritual life than who has got fame and name and is known as an intellectual person. A historian can never become a saint. He's not a saint. Can become a saint when he lets go of all that and becomes a devotee, a bhakta, and surrenders completely. And those that safeguard righteousness to attain supreme knowledge. And so those that safeguard righteousness, what does that mean? That not only do we do righteous things and live a righteous life, but we also react when something that's unrighteous is happening, not because we want to do something, because we want to punish somebody, but because we want to do it for the welfare of the good without any thought of our own welfare. And that is what people like Gandhi did. They did something for India, for bringing back the rule of Indians for India, because he was not doing it for his own power, name, fame, nothing. He did it for others. That is one of the higher levels of capabilities or qualities to attain the level of the Siddha. And we'll finish in a few minutes. As one sits in discipline and enters the state of void, the entire body erupts in untold bliss, and a certain light is felt in the body, and this Brahma Danda swirls around like a gentle whirlwind at the peak, and looking up goes forth. So this is what happens, and this is the opening of the Sahasrara. When that happens, we have all felt bliss as we grow through our meditation practices, where that bliss is untold bliss. It is nothing, it has no reason, it is just pure bliss. But when this particular thing happens, then the whole body erupts into light, and then you have untold bliss, and then it goes up. As it travels, it crosses ordinary knowledge and subtle knowledge and attains supreme knowledge. It understands subtle knowledge all by itself. It is that which allows one to understand the highest truth that exists at the peak, even as one is alive. That is where the Siddhas and the Arhats and the Ramana Maharishis of the world live. At the time of death, it helps the soul, which is the embodiment of knowledge, to emerge from this area and attain the absolute. So the final, they say the exit of the soul is through different portals of the human body. But the one who exits from the Sahasrara level is the one who never comes back. So that is the one who's able to completely break the link between duality and non-duality, and say, okay, I am not coming back. I am done. I have attained all the knowledge that I need. And this is the end for this ego, or the created soul that came into existence. It's gone through millions of births, and now it is the end of that final, the end of the cycle is the final exit. So with this, we stop today, and we will not be having any more sessions in December. We will begin again in January.